And we're back, Stripe Show podcast on a Tuesday. I'm your host, Travis Fulton. Thank you for making us part of your day. Just kind of work through us here a little bit. In my new studio, there's a lot of construction going around. You might hear a jackhammer. You might hear a train. You might hear a snow blower. No, you're not going to hear that here in Florida, but there's some things going on. So just kind of work through us here. We got a great show as we look ahead here on a Tuesday. It is the Byron Nelson this week, another week on the PGA Tour, another tournament, good field down there in McKinney, Texas. And to help us break it down, one of our favorite guests coming to us across the pond where it's summer, 85 degrees, I'm sure. Light winds. Ben Coley, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good, thanks, Travis. Yeah, I'm in Leeds, which is kind of, I don't know if, I don't think it is officially, but it'd be the Windy City over here for comparisons with Chicago. But yeah, it's not summer yet. But I'm promised a heat wave.
Okay.
Hopefully next week to coincide with the PGA. I quite like to spend my mornings in the garden before getting down to the serious business of a golf tournament. So we'll see.
A serious business. That's a good leadway here, I think, into this next discussion. There's a lot going on in professional golf. I had Daniel Rappaport on yesterday with Digest and his monthly catch up with us. And, you know, I'm doing the run of show. I'm like, man, I got to fit all of this in. There's so much I want to talk to him about. And of course, we're going to get to this week's PGA Tour event here momentarily. But one of the big topics is this LIV series, which is backed by Saudi Arabia, of course. I know you've been out there on Twitter. You need to follow at Ben Coley Golf. Really good follow. And I always enjoy your perspective. And, you know, I don't want to just lob this to you in a way of, hey, what do you think of the Saudi Arabia League? But, of course, some of the guys now are coming out. Lee Westwood over there had some things to say. As you kind of evaluate listening to Lee Westwood, listening to Sergio Garcia on Thursday, quote, he can't wait to get away from it. He's only got 2 more weeks on the PGA Tour, implying that he is going to go over to the Saudi League. As all this comes out, how does it line up for you?
Yeah, it's you know, my thoughts on the tour itself are fairly clear. I think the world would be better off if this wasn't happening, and I think it's incumbent upon people to use whatever voice they have if they do share that view. You know, I should be fully clear. Like I'm not what you call a proper golf journalist. You know, the guys who spend every week on the tour building up their contacts books, and I know you had Dan Rappaport on last night, and you know, some of the guys over here are, you know, spent their whole working lives in the press rooms. They know better what's going on than I do. But we are at kind of a crossroads. Today, Tuesday, is the deadline for players on the DP World Tour to request an exemption to play in an event on a different tour, that being the one that takes place a week before the US Open. So more's going to come out, I'm sure. At the moment, you know, all I've heard really is a few of the more veteran players disappointed that one of them's Martin Keimer, who's always been very erudite and likable, and I would be eager to hear his thoughts. And I hope we get that, because we've heard Keimer the last couple of years really talk at a very deep level about his own game and the psychology of it and sport and life. And I want to hear him explain why he wants to do it, because if he can't justify it, I don't know as anyone can. But yeah, we're at an interesting point. I'm told Tommy Fleetwood's one of the names that's not going to be playing, which is good news as far as I'm concerned. But you know, I'm still to hear why it's good from a golfer's perspective, bar money. And fair play to Lee Westwood. He said he's trying to earn money. To that end, I get it to a degree, but I'm still to hear why you want to be playing there a week before the US Open.
Yeah, it's I mean, other than money, what is it? Right? I mean, let's just read between the lines. I know they're not going to just come out and say that. They're being coached up by Liv, I'm sure, just like the PGA Tour is going to coach up their players. But if you have a working brain and you look at what's happening, I mean, that's what this is. This is a money situation. This is sports washing at its finest from Saudi Arabia. We know of the human rights issues that are happening over there. And, you know, Lee Westwood at the end of his career, you know, he's going to be turning 50. It's tough for him to be competitive on the PGA Tour in these bigger events. Even him answering it, I can appreciate the position that he's in And as I was telling Daniel, look, I just want someone to come out and say, look, I mean, it's a lot of money. I'm at the end of my career. Um, and this is a business decision I'm going to make. And you don't have to like it, but that's the decision I make. And, they dance around it. It's good for the game. We're growing the game. We're going to fix issues in profession. Come on, stop. Stop. And so, yeah, I get frustrated with that as well. I know you do also. I was surprised with Martin Keimer. We have Jason Kokrak on tomorrow. I'm very interested to hear what he has to say. He's been linked to this Saudi league as other players, Kevin Na. So, yeah, we know Phil's there. We know Robert Garrigus is going to be there. We know Westwood. We know Sergio has applied. But, yeah, in the next 24 hours over there, this is the deadline for the DP World Tour, as you imagine. And after reading John Huggins' really well-read article put together with Golf Digest, it's big over here in the United States, but this has big impact on that tour over there also. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens here. And it's all going to come to a head here in the next, call it 30 days. We're going to know a lot more, especially when that tour comes to the United States in Portland. That is where the line is going to be drawn, and they have to be approved 30 days before that. So it's coming.
Yeah, and look, to the DP World Tour point, this is an existential threat to the DP World Tour. It isn't to the PGA Tour. The PGA Tour is flawed in many different ways that we could probably do a whole podcast on. But fundamentally, it's a very, very successful, the most successful in the history of the sport, golf league, for want of a better phrase. It makes money. I know it's, some debate as to whether it's meant to or not, but the people who manage it earn plenty of money. The players earn plenty of money. They have very good insurance and pension policies. Everyone's well looked after. The tournaments they run are brilliant. They might not always go to our favorite courses because of logistics and money and various other things, but it is fundamentally a very good machine. The DP World Tour has had to battle some really, I mean, you can argue all you like about the management of it, but they've come through an economic crisis which hit certain staples of the European Tour harder than it did other places, Spain being probably the best example, and certainly the UK. And then they've gone into a pandemic. And the DP World Tour, and this is a point made in John Huggins' piece, that the DP World Tour kept going. The Asian Tour didn't, the Australian Tour didn't. The China Tour, PGA Tour China, seems to have just stopped to exist or ceased to exist for a time. The DP World Tour kept things going. They gave these players a path to make money. They gave them protections. They said to guys, look, we're not going to knock you off the tour this year. Your card is valid for another year. They've put all kinds of safety nets. And it brings into question, how much do you feel these players like Westwood owe a tour? And that's a difficult one because, I've gone back and forth on that a little bit myself. But one thing's for sure, if Live is as successful as they want it to be, I don't think the DP World Tour will continue to exist. So if I've got to put my small flag in the ground, it's going on the side of the DP World Tour, and I just hope the players with the big flags do the same, and we'll be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. That's well said. And with that, let me ask you this one more question on this. Because over here, and this has been brought up a couple times, and Lee Westwood pointed this out when it was the European Tour. They played in Saudi Arabia, and to Lee's point, it was, look, we played in Saudi Arabia then. Now all of a sudden, the Saudis are involved with this, and it's a problem. Are you getting some of that over there with some of the players and the rumblings? I know you're kind of tied in on that.
100%. And that, I suppose, is why when you hear, I mean, famously so far, the PGA Tour are not engaging at all with this. Whereas Keith Pelly has definitely had discussions with the people behind Live. A couple of years ago, very, very nearly went a different direction. Instead, we had this strategic alliance with the PGA Tour, which, by the way, is providing us with a world-class Scottish Open field this summer. Um, but I suppose that's why you're not hearing the tours themselves make this about human rights, because we know, and I have big issues with this at a fundamental level, but we do know that, there's a lot of grey here at the very least. The PGA Tour has operated in China, albeit not directly associated with the CCP, but it has operated in China. The European Tour, as you said, went to Saudi Arabia. The first time we saw Saudi Arabian golf on our televisions was on the European Tour as it was. So the European Tour, or the DP World Tour as they are now, by the way, DP World, a Dubai company funded by the Dubai ruling family, There's all kind of issues there as well. So that's where it gets murky, and that's why I think the tours themselves are positioning this more as a product and loyalty thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's difficult for the DP World Tour because their product has been diminished. There's no doubt about that it's not what it was. But I don't think we should be too fatalistic. I think, you look last week, the British Masters was played in front of massive crowds at the Belfry,
Yeah.
a fabulous tournament. And I think the DP World Tour is coming to understand that, and hence the alignment, that really it can be a feeder to the PGA Tour,
Mm-hmm.
um, and a brilliant one, and a brilliant pathway. And unless those pathways exist between Live and the PGA Tour, for a young player, if you want to achieve, and let's forget the money, if you want to achieve what you dreamt of achieving as a kid, um, there's a path you should take and a path you should avoid as things stand. And obviously, there's still stuff we don't know. But as long as the PGA Tour resists, the DP World Tour has to resist and hope that alliance is strong enough.
Look, if I was a young American player and I wasn't quite ready for the PGA Tour and I had the option to go play in Europe to get my game going and travel the world and be a professional golfer, sign me up. I mean, it's kind of where we're going, right? And the DP World Tour, what they're going to do with that is it can be a feeder, yes, into the PGA Tour, and that's going to be the grand. And I think it'll be interesting to see if there's going to be like these top shelf tournaments and what that's going to be called. And then you've got your feeders into that and how that's going to work in the United States and then over in Europe. And then you've got, let's say, for all intents and purposes, AA baseball underneath that with Latino America and the Canadian Tour and those kinds of things. And, so it's just this feeder system. And that's something that, obviously LIV is not even close to even being able to sniff when it comes to that. So, there's just a lot of layers to it. And I wanted to get your thoughts on it. So I appreciate you shedding some light on your thoughts, but also just the impact over there on the DP World Tour, because I think over here, a lot of people aren't thinking about that. They're thinking about the PGA Tour and what's right in front of them. But the reality is the impact is real in the DP World Tour. And John Huggan put a nice piece together on that with Golf Digest. All right, let's fast forward here now to the PGA Tour event here. The Byron Nelson. This is an event now that's kind of got its spot the week before the PGA. We know some players don't like to play before the major, and some do. One player that liked to was Phil Mickelson. Of course, we haven't heard from him in quite some time. So it'll be interesting to see if he plays next week in Southern Hills. But this event is near and dear to my heart. I've watched this event in person many, many times growing up with family members living down in the Dallas, Texas area. It's played at TPC Craig's Ranch now. This is its second year at this property. I've been to this property a couple times. I've played the course. It's 7,400 yards, Ben. It's fairly long, but this is going to be an absolute birdie fest, isn't it, at Craig's Ranch?
It certainly is. I mean, 25 under last year, and I think that look, KH won fairly comfortably, but the other thing to remember is like the last 2 hours of that tournament, the conditions were pretty foul. I think the halfway lead was 17 under. I think they had a lot of rain in the build up last year, and I gather that conditions aren't as soft this time, but zoysia grass tends to be pretty receptive anyway, which is what they got on the fairways. Those fairways are so wide, and really the punishment even for missing them is not severe. Patton Kizzire, I think, was last but one in driving accuracy last year. He still shot a 63 and a 64 and finished third. So it's very much what you do after the drive. I think it's fairly level playing field. Usually you think with a par 72 with a drivable par 4 that's 7,500 yards, that power would probably trump accuracy, and it does, but no more so, I would say, than any other week. So second shot and have a good week on the greens, I think, is the formula. And you've alluded to it already. I think it makes it as open as you're going to get in terms of a PGA Tour event. That's despite the fact we've got 9 of the world's top 20. And I think the one point I would make is that you look at the run of winners we've had since February, March time. Smith, Scheffler, Cantlay and Schauffele, Homer, who's obviously a member of the elite now, John Rahm has won, Jordan Spieth has won, and so on and so forth. And the one exception was days before the Masters when we got a massive shock in JJ Spawn. So definitely don't rule anything out this week.
Yeah, I think of this place, the Georgia fairways, certainly the ball sits up real nice, and you're not going to get a lot of tumble off that kind of grass either. But even if you do miss the fairway here, it is big. I mean, it's wide off the fairways. The rough's not going to be too penalizing. Of course, you can always going to get those occasional flyers here and there. But big greens, perfect bent grass greens. If you're relying on your short game here, you're probably going to get lapped at this particular venue. So you got to give yourself a lot of looks, like you said, second shot, and you got to convert. If you're going to be up there on the first page of the leaderboard. So let's get right in it. KH Lee was 25 under. I'd be surprised if we see quite that low this year. The weather is going to be in the high 80s. And you're going to get that 10 to 15 wind, standard there in the Dallas area on Thursday. It looks like it kind of calms down Friday, Saturday, and then picks back up a little on Sunday, but nothing, too crazy here, I think, in the way of wind, which I think really is this course's defense. So without it, but to your point, I don't think it's going to be quite as soft.
Yeah, it seems like it might be that just a hair trickier than last year because of that. Because as any professional will tell you, doesn't matter what golf course you put them on. If it's soft, it's I suppose last
It's
week was
over.
probably a bit different, but that was also cold and rainy. If it's soft and warm and calm, they're gonna shoot some low numbers. So I would say 20 to 22 under is probably more like it. But even so, one of the lowest scoring events we've had this year, because we've had a bit of everything so far, but probably since the century, not necessarily an out and out shootout.
Yeah, we're going to go lower than last week's, folks. So if you didn't like last week, we're going to go much lower than that. KH Lee opens up at 100 to 1 here on the show. He was even a little higher than that. He's been bet down a little bit. So not very many people interested in the defending champ, who was a long shot, right? If I remember, he was he 150 or something, 100 to 1 last year?
Yeah,
I believe.
you'd got 200 over here as well. So yeah, he was a big upset. I mean, he'd
Yeah.
been playing well, hadn't he? Had that runner up in Phoenix, but um, you know, I guess with the one strange thing that links the two editions of this we've had before the USPGA, obviously the other coming back in 2019, is that they've both been won by a long shot from Korea. 3 Korean winners of this. I know a lot of the Korean contingent base themselves in Texas, but I don't believe KH Lee's one of them. And yeah, just a random thing. But yeah, he's he played a bit better last week, but I think back to back is a big ask for someone who was a surprise winner in the first place.
Yeah, as much as he likes TPCs. Anyway, let's get into it here. Scheffler, #1 player in the world. Going to be good to see him back in Texas. He's right now, and you got to shop around, folks. This is DraftKings Sportsbook right now as we come on. He is 7 to 1. JT is 9 to 1. Will Zalatoris, 14 to 1. Texas kid, of course, but went to Wake. Will's played this golf course many, many times. Dustin Johnson in the field. He usually plays before a major championship, 18 to 1. Xander's in the field at 18 to 1. Let's go down to Burns at 20. Spieth, who has a win, at 22. I'll stop there. In your favorites, give me you got a fade and a favorite in there?
I think the two I'm most interested in would be Sam Burns, for fairly obvious reasons. He probably ran out of petrol on the weekend here last year and still finished second. He dominated a second stage qualifying school section here 5 years ago, I think it was. So, there's a fairly obvious case to make for Sam Burns. And the other being Jordan Spieth. I mean, he was top 10 here last year at his absolute best. We're talking approach play and putting. Obviously, the putt has been an issue. It didn't stop him winning the RBC, but he was definitely fortuitous. I just had a hard time accepting half the price that he was that week. So I kind of probably lean towards Burns, but without being particularly interested in. For a fade, I'll take a risk, and this is just probably being a bit contrarian, but I'm not as sold. A lot of people over here certainly seem to think Will Zalatoris might win this week. I can't think of anything worse than a 25 under winning total for his breakthrough. He hit 90% of greens here last year and just scraped inside the top 20. Now, you can argue he's putting better, but essentially you're basing that on Augusta, where he happens to have putted well in 2 visits. But in strokes gained terms, the last time you'll see him gaining strokes away from that was, September, October last year. So I'm happy to take on Zalatoris. I'm sure he'll play well, but to win this tournament, he's going to have to putt better than he has anywhere bar Augusta in a year. So, yeah, I'm happy to oppose him.
Yeah, we don't get Masters stats layered out in for the most part, but you would have to think he was probably positive in strokes gained putting at the Masters. But outside of that, he hasn't finished positive in putting since October.
Yeah, I'd much rather back him for next week. Like I think
Yeah.
he's a real candidate for next week. I know he's won a college event at Southern Hills as well, as has Scotty Scheffler. Whatever that's worth, we'll see. But yeah, I kind of sit on him this week. He is what he is. I get the motivation to get off the mark and
Sure.
win, but I couldn't bear to watch him putting. I think when you need to shoot 65 4 times, or 66 4 times, maybe it's a pretty big ask to do that putting to an average standard, however good your iron plays.
It's funny. I told Will's out or not Will. I told Daniel Rappaport yesterday that I thought I'm drawing a blank. That played with Cameron Young. I thought Cameron Young would win before Will's Outdoors on the PGA Tour.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, you certainly, he's been a persistent threat. I know I saw someone on Twitter earlier saying they wish he was playing this week. I think it would have been a great chance for him, certainly. But we got a good class, haven't we? I mean, we have got Davis Riley, who's obviously good
Yep.
friends with Will. So that'd be an I'm sure they've got a little battle going on to,
Yep.
who can do it first. And it wouldn't surprise me if when one does, the other follows suit. But there's a big contrast between them actually. Davis Riley, there's a guy who might be the best putter this week. So at twice the price, I'd probably rather play him than Zalatoris. But I know this could come back to bite me. I backed Zalatoris for the Masters, where he played really solid. His iron play actually wasn't as good as it can be. His wedges were a bit off, but I don't know. It's like I said, he nearly won at Torrey Pines when I think they got to about 14, 15 under, but it's still tough. I'm surely when he wins, it's going to be 12, 15 under and not 20, 25.
Yeah. Yeah, Cameron Young's not playing this week, and of course he played with Will, and Will was the more prolific collegiate player. Of course, Will comes out, makes the splash, and he's been right there. And look, I mean, Jordan wins a few weeks back and loses 2.5 strokes gained putting. So like, hey, Travis, it can be done, right? And Will can do that. So I don't know if it's going to happen here, though. To me, at this venue, I would shy away from that. And for that, I'm out on Spieth. I'm certainly fading Will Zalatoris. We know JT's close. We know what Scheffler's capable of, obviously, in the run that he's on. I'll probably. I just can't. I'm just kind of at that. I made the decision with Xander that I'm done betting him to win. I feel like at this point it's in there a little bit. I think he struggles to put things away. You watch Max Homa, who has tremendous win equity when he gets into these situations last week. For me, it's Burns. I mean, I'm a Burns homer, and if he's playing, I bet him. So when Burns wins, I win always. I've been on the nice side of that a couple times, but in handicapping this down, I'm certainly not betting Scheffler at 7. I find myself falling all the way to Sam Burns at 20. I mean, that's where I'm going to start. And as we continue down, I'm also going to play Hideki. I got him at 35. He's actually at 28 now. But Joaquin Niemann's at 35. Seamus Powers at 35, who's starting to make a name for himself. Koepka, 35. I know a lot of people who just get to that 35-40 range and they just automatic play it with Koepka. Adam Scott at 40. I'm interested to see if this might be the last couple tournaments for Adam Scott. His name's been rumored to be out there. There's Fleetwood at 40. Kokrak will be on the pod tomorrow, 45. And Gooch, I've played him. Call me crazy. I like Gooch here this week at 45.
No, I can see the case for Gooch. I was kind of interested in him to some degree. I know this is probably over analysis, but I wonder to what extent his mind will wander forward to the USPGA. He's from Oklahoma. It's a big week for him. I've actually got him for the USPGA at a nice price from back in January, so I'll happily see some signs of encouragement here. He looks a good type for it, doesn't he? He's a brilliant iron player. His putter's behaved itself over the last 12 to 18 months. So I could definitely see him going well, but I just wonder to what extent he might be a little bit distracted.
What's your feel on Seamus and kind of the trajectory of him?
Yeah, look, he's had a fantastic 12 to 18 months, very similar, I suppose, to Taylor Gooch in that he's taking his career to a new level. He started off, I think he shot 65 here on Thursday last year, ended up finishing 9th. He's obviously become a better player since. I was a bit disappointed with him last week, but I would say that there are certain events that come along and you just think, I can just ignore that form. And that would probably be one of them, the weather they had in Maryland. So, yeah, I can see Seamus playing well. He played well in the Masters, good Masters debut. And he's a birdie machine, isn't he? So
Mhm.
I like him, but there were just, I mean, it's kind of weird to see, as you said, I mean, Hideki wasn't for me necessarily, but to see Hideki and Kepka alongside Seamus Power in the betting is kind of
Yeah.
slightly odd. And that actually, I'm probably skipping ahead here, but that's kind of why I like Mark Leishman as well. He's
Yeah.
he's probably a bit of a better player than some of these. Um, and I thought he was, he's sort of 50-1 over here. And I think last week's missed cut's probably just worth ignoring. I mean, his approach play was still great. He's going to love the width off the tee here.
Yep.
I know they've added this to his schedule because they felt it was a good fit. Some of the guys who do his performance statistics and data analysis over here have told me that. So I think it's a great fit for Leash, and he's motivated as well because he's 47th in the world now. I think
Mhm.
46th, 47th. He'd be desperate to stay in the top 50, and hopefully he can do that with a big week.
I got Leash at 65.
Yeah, you see, I think that's hard to argue with.
Yeah.
He never comes up well on models because he plays the odds. He's not consistent, and he
Yeah.
has tournaments where he misses the cut by 5.
Mhm.
But his upside, I mean, look at his CV compared to most of the players around him. Um, yeah, they're chalk and cheese. So yeah, and as I said, his approach play was great last week. Tee to green in the Masters, he was top 5 tee to green according to Data Golf. Played well in the Zurich Classic as defending champions. There's really not anything and he played well here last year. So I thought he looked really really solid.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Yeah, Leash right now is 65 on DraftKings. I think that's I had him written down. I haven't bet him yet, but I think you've certainly talked me into that. As we work down into that range, Vegas at 55. I mean, is there anybody hitting the ball better than Johnny Vegas with his irons? I mean, my God.
It's
I mean,
phenomenal,
it
isn't
is,
it? The last 2 years now, or certainly the last year in particular, his irons were amazing last week.
jeez.
Um, Probably one of those, he was really bad off the tee, and there's a people will understand this better than I do, but it kind of gives you the opportunity to hit those recovery shots and probably flatter yourself a little bit. But look, he's tee to green. He's been one of the best players on the PGA Tour for a long time. He seems to find ways not to win, um, which is slightly disconcerting. But he's been there and done it before, hasn't he? He'd be a bit like Zalatoris for me. Like I much rather wait for something a little tougher. Um, but obviously he's got some Texas connections of his own,
Mhm.
and he was ninth here last year. So I think he's one of those like first round leads, absolutely, but maybe not to win it.
Top 20 plus 210, Vegas.
Yeah, rock solid,
Yeah.
rock solid.
Yeah. I like that bet too. I've actually got that at Vegas plus 210. Here's three names I want to throw at you. Three interesting names here in the middle. Give me rate these in order for me. Like your best, the one you like the most here this week. 1, 2, 3. Ready? Maverick McNeely, Jason Day, and Aaron Wise.
So McNeely first. He's
Okay.
he's he's my headline selection this
Okay.
week. Big hitter, approach play massively improved, dynamite putter. It all adds up to a good course fit. He came through Q school here the same year Burns did, so he has that. He's making his debut in the tournament. Loads of incentive. He's just hovering around outside the top 50 in the world. Don't think he'll be distracted by the fact he's playing the USPGA next week. I think he has an outstanding chance to play well here. Aaron Wise, I liked, but there's just that nagging doubt about the putter. I know that's kind of a theme with a couple of these I've mentioned now, but he's a past champion at Trinity Forest where he shot whatever number it was, 25 under. He can do it, but I wouldn't. I think what we saw in Mexico, where he has one really bad day, is probably the sort of thing we should continue to expect. But I would still have him ahead of Jason Day. I liked how Jason played last week. It was good to see. Apart from that 2 hours on Saturday where things unravelled, his approach play was much better. But he said it himself during the tournament, like a hard, lush course like that. Um, he's always loved those. Merion, Congressional. Back in the day, his wins at Torrey Pines. He's always been a good, tough conditions golfer. Again, he can obviously. I think he won one of the playoff events once in 22 under and whatever it was. But
Right.
I just I don't see him connecting 4 low rounds.
Yeah.
So I hope his comeback continues, but for now, I think it will have to do so at a fairly low level.
Yeah, it's common with McNeely, and he's a player that he takes care of the par fives. We got 4 of them this week. He gets ample looks, but he converts. He can putt. He's one of those guys that, that ratio is in his favor. So, yeah, the big Mav McNeely, Stanford Cardinal, can stand up, let the driver go, and then, let those opportunities come to him and see if he can get it into the 20s. So I think I agree with that. Yeah, it's funny. I've received, just more texts and DMs on Jason Day than I think I have anybody in the field, because based off of last week and his play, they're like, well, look, he only had the one bad day on Saturday and everything else was fair point. Aaron Weiss certainly gets some play. We keep coming down here. Stop me when you hear a name you like. Alex Noren, 55. Hadwin, I'm sure we'll get a little respect this week at 55. I'll probably pass. Bezaden Hutt at 60. There's my boy Mito Pereira at 65. Siwoo Kim, 65. Cameron Champ, 65. And then there's Leash, who I know you like. Right now it's 65. Do you like Davis Riley? We talked about him at 65. Is that
Yeah,
someone that you could?
yeah, definitely. I mean, he's a little bit shorter than that over here. So, if he'd just been a bit bigger, he would have probably made my shortlist. I'm, 3 top fives if you include the Zurich Classic in his last 5 starts. He's really finding his feet now. I, being someone who tends to look more at long games, the fact that he's been riding a very, very hot putter, certainly in the Valspar in Mexico, is not necessarily what I want to see. But look, he's won in Texas on the Corn Ferry Tour, hasn't he? He's a brilliant young talent surrounded by the right people. He's right up there as one of the most talented young players on the PGA Tour. So if he continues to gain 2 strokes around with the putter, then yeah, why not? It seems like a very good fit for him.
Why am I drawn to Keith Mitchell at 75? Why?
I was drawn to him a little bit. I'll be honest. I think he drove it badly last week, but that's kind
Yeah.
of not too bad because he very rarely drives it badly. So you kind of think, well, he'll sort that
Yeah.
out. It was a weird course. I don't know about you. I kind of probably just up overvaluing the Honda because I know he played well at the CJ Cup last year where he made like a million birdies in a row. But um, I just I think I think of Keith Mitchell as probably wants 12 under, 15 under rather
Yeah.
than 20.
Yeah. I think if not to win, but a top 20 potentially. I just, for some reason, I keep coming back to him. He's there. Bubba's at 75. Could be the last little stretch for Bubba too. I think Bubba's going to the Live Tour. I don't know that for sure, but that's what it feels like to me. Anyway, Munoz 75. Griffin, Lanto Griffin. He's back, folks. Lanto Griffin is back playing some good golf. He's at 80-1. Can Lanto? What did he end up finishing last week? I know he had a nice little run there. He finished 6th at Wells Fargo. Hit the ball exceptionally well. Drove it well. Good approach game. Putter was okay. Around the green game seems to, we know Lanto, that's kind of his weakness, but I'm willing to look past that this week. Lanto, definitely, you go through this. I definitely give Lanto over Keith Mitchell the lean on the top 20 here.
Yeah, he was the first name I wrote down when I started on Saturday, which is when I tend to do a good chunk of my research. He's another one. He's a bit like Mitchell in some regards that I felt probably you just that sort of tee to green game he's showing at the moment. I kind of wanted it to be a tougher course. Like he's one to definitely keep an eye on. I know again he's one of those like he was 3rd in the Amex earlier this year, so that and hopefully we'll come to the winner of the Amex, who I do like at a big price. I do think that's a good guide. But in general with Lanto, I just wonder if he's another who wants it a little bit tougher. But look, the way he's playing, he's clearly turned a corner. So I think he's put back to back the 2 best driving performances of his career. And if he keeps doing that, that's the foundations of a second win. And obviously his first one came in Texas 3 years ago. So yeah, there's a lot to like.
It's interesting. Then we go, you go Harmon, Palmer, Straka, Hughes. You got Kitayama now as we jump to the 100-1. And I'll tell you, Kurt Kitayama has been, we talked about him in great length last week's show. He performs again last week. Do you just keep it rolling with him? I mean, is he just a good play? Just keep going. Obviously, very difficult golf course at 100 to 1.
Yeah, I like Kitayama. He's another that's finding his feet. He came through Corn Ferry Tour. You know, he obviously won a couple of times on the DP World Tour, and again under tougher conditions. Sorry to keep saying that, but I'm not against him under lower scoring conditions at all.
Mhm.
Because you look at his two big strengths when he's on iron play, putting. They were both extraordinarily good in the Honda. Um, and if he's got a problem, it's that for all he hits the ball a long way for someone who's about my size, which is not very big. He he's pretty wild off the tee at times. So again, you probably think this is a nice course for him in that respect. So yeah, there's loads to like about Kitayama, and he's another for people who don't have time to go wading through leaderboards from 2016 Q School, but he came through second stage here as well. So he has played the course before and has some fond memories.
Yeah, last 24 rounds in this field. Approach third, birdies fourth. Par fives, like to see him maybe take advantage of do a little better in that rank. But yeah, this field here, I'm gonna have to think a little bit more on the Kitayama. Right now, he's plus 500 on the top 20. Who on the top 100 and beyond? As we start getting into some of the longer shots here, as you mentioned, KH Lee was 200 to 1 last year, winning this. As we start getting into the 110s and beyond, I'm going to go Matthew Wolf 130. I'll start us there. I look, I was encouraged. Now you can let the big dog hunt. Better golf course for him. I'll go there. He's got firepower. He can do it. So I'll start with him there.
100% with you on that. I think of every person in the field, you know, probably Leishman aside, I would say relative to his price, I think he's the one with the biggest upside. We all know how capable he is. You know, it's only a year and a half ago he was going off 33 to 1 for a US Open. And we're three times that for a Byron Nelson. I think Twin Cities is actually a good sort of pointer, similar sort of test, similar scoring. He won there obviously back in 2019, shot 21 under par. The Shriners, again, you know, lost a playoff in about 24 under when Martin Laird won, and was second again when Sung Jae Im shot 64 on Sunday. That was only last October when he was playing brilliant golf. He's very volatile. We saw, you know, he played really well in Saudi Arabia actually when he was sixth earlier in the year. He's done nothing since then. Shot 81 at Augusta, all kinds of stuff like that. But if anyone turns it around quickly, he's one of them. And actually, I think he's got 7 top 6 finishes since the start of last year. Sorry, 2020. Um, in about 50 appearances. So already that tells you, you know, he's popping up often enough. But every one of them came after he made the cut on his previous start. And for a guy who misses a lot of cuts, that I thought was a good pointer. And as you said, he finished 25th last week. Better than that, he was third after round one, sixth after 54 holes. So, you know, a solid final round. He could have finished 10th, could have finished 8th. He would have been 50, 66 to 1. I think he's a must bet this week. And you have to accept that he might come out on Thursday and shoot 80. That's just the nature of the beast.
I think he's getting into a better spot. I do. I think we're getting to I think we're getting to a better place now.
And he's in Oklahoma. Sorry to interrupt you, but the only other thing I wanted to add was he's in Oklahoma for the PGA next week, which is where he made his name as a college golfer. So if he needs any more incentive to build on what just happened in Maryland, then that carrot next week to go and do himself justice there, I'm sure he'll be working very, very hard. And hopefully that improvement continues.
And if I had to go beyond that, I'll give you another name. I'll go Swafford at 250.
Have you read my preview, Travis? You haven't,
is that on your name too? Okay. I mean, those are the two names that I put down. Wolf 130, Swafford 250, who we know can fill it up with some birdies. So that's, you know, those are my two names in the bombs.
Yeah, I mean, look, Swafford's won 3 times, 18, 20, 23 under par. He's 32nd this season in birdie average. He's one of the best iron players in the field right now, which is not something we've always said about him. This time last year, his iron play was shocking, and hence he missed the cut here. But he returns with his iron play really good. It was amazing in Texas. He's got a Hovland-like problem around the greens, but again, this is a course where Zalatoris hit 90% of greens. They are big and they are pretty receptive. So again, if Swafford brings his A game from tee to green, we probably don't need to worry too much about the chipping. And his putting is one of those. It's kind of him in a nutshell. He can be the best putter this week. He really could. He could be one of the worst. I love that volatility, because you're getting a guy who's won 3 times and he's in amongst players who are just simply not as good. So I absolutely loved him this week. Yeah.
Yeah, he finished 6.9 positive putting at RBC last time we saw him. Then he lost 2.3 the tournament before that. It's just funny to go through his stats. I mean, he'll go -7 +4. -6 +6. I mean, it's like flipping a coin on one end or the other. Who am I missing? Any other names in there as you go bombs? Maybe a top 20 in there for another bomb or so.
I'll give you Scott Piercy for a top 20. I
Okay.
think this is a
Piercy.
pretty good course for Piercy. I know
Okay.
he's, a lot of people will think, okay, well, Scott Piercy's probably done his winning now, and that may well be true. But his last 4 starts have been 12th, 21st, 33rd, and 37th. At various points, he's been top 10 for putting. He's been top 10 for approach players, drivers, kind of around average, but solid enough. You think of him at his best, you think of courses like Scottsdale, like in Reno, where you just got to pile up birdies. He shot 9 under in round 1 at Twin Cities the year Matt Wolff won, which is another, again, as I mentioned, that's a course I do like as a guide to this. I just think he's playing a bit better now, and it's his kind of test. And he's got a very good record in the event. I know it's moved around. He was a real 4-season specialist. Then he was second at Trinity Forest when he famously, or semi-famously, didn't make a bogey, and came second behind Sung Kang. Yeah, I'm fairly hopeful he can play well, because he seems to be in a good place.
Justin Leonard's in the field.
No, he wasn't on my list, I'll be honest.
Leonard is in the field as he gets ready for his. He was on the pod 3 months ago, or 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, and he's gonna play a little bit starting in the fall on PGA Tour Champions as he turns 50. Did I see Andrew Loop in the field too? I think he is.
He came through the Monday qualifier, didn't he?
Andrew Loop, yeah.
It's been a long time.
Wow.
We're talking massive long shots here. This guy, I've put up a tip at 750 to 1 over here this week, which is the first, probably one of the 2 or 3 times I've ever done that. Obviously, I would expect it to be a losing tip, but I did keep going back to Austin Cook. And won the RSM in 21 under. He was part of the playoff with Martin Laird and Matt Wolff in 23 under in the Shriners. He shot 22 under and came 4th in the Barbasol. Once upon a time, as a Monday qualifier, he looked like he might win the Houston Open the week before the Masters. He's got good form at Southwind, which is Zoysia grass fairways, which, I don't want to play too much into that, but it's something. And last year he came here, he missed 11 cuts in a row. He opened with a pair of 68s to be 27th at halfway. He faded. I'm not surprised. He was in terrible form. This time, I think the key is his form doesn't look very good again, but his approach play has been good the last twice. He missed the cut by 1 shot last week. He missed 3 5-footers in the second round. It all suggests to me a golfer is lacking confidence, which is not ideal. But for if you're talking low scoring, capable with his irons and his putter, slight improvements lately, and actually played okay here last year, 750 to 1. That's my real long shot.
Wow.
And we are talking, if there's an event where you take a chance, I think this is the one.
Yeah, sure. That's fantastic. And I'm looking at his splits, his best surface, bent grass greens. So there you go. A lot of things lining up for Austin Cook, the 2017 RSM champion, in the field this week. On that, folks, we've got to bring the show to an end, because that was brilliant. I love that. Scott Piercy, top 20, and Austin Cook, plus 700. Those are your bombs. Don't forget Wolff at 130. Swafford, another one that we both like, at 250. You've talked me into Leash. I had him circled 65. And I'll tell you, one of the first names for me that I put down was McNeely, and just listening to you talk about him, this is a young man that's coming. It feels like Cameron Young's going to get a win here in the next 3 months. I would put McNeely right there, perhaps behind him. I think he's close as well. So before we go, who gets their first win? Will Zalatoris or Cameron Young? That was a off the record debate I had.
I'm going to be boring and say Zalatoris will beat him to it, but look, I understand. Look, I guess the point is, if you were going to bet on it, you wouldn't be betting evens, would you? So I can understand, like, you might see the value in Cameron Young. Listen, they're both great players, and it'd be fun to see if they can make the Ryder Cup next year, or even the President's Cup this year.
Yeah.
But it seems crazy that Zalatoris wasn't really considered properly for the Ryder Cup last year, and Sam Burns didn't make the side either. So we're sort of quaking in our boots over here a little bit, but hopefully Rory continues the resurgence and we'll be all right.
The Americans are deep right now. It is, my goodness. There are so many good. I mean, Scheffler now, who just barely made the team, for crying out loud. Him and Burns. I picked Burns, and everybody else is on Scheffler, and can't argue that. The way he went out and beat Rahm in the singles, and obviously has now propelled him, I think. I mean, since that moment, 4 wins, #1 player in the world, Masters champ. He's the favorite here this week at 7-1, and he'll be up in Tulsa for the PGA Championship next week. Let's hope Tiger and Phil are there. Let's bring it all together in one spot, and let's hug it out. Everybody just hugs it out, and we all just move forward and play professional golf. Hey, Ben, you're the man. Appreciate it. Go follow him at Ben Coley Golf on Twitter. He's the head of editorial for sportinglife.com. Appreciate your time, buddy.